In this video, we're going to take a look at Chem Compute. So open your favorite browser. In this case, I'm using Safari, and go to chemcompute.org. And it should open this web page. Now click on Login here, and it should bring you to this window where you can select Login using Google or your institution. Now go here in this drop-down menu and select Emory University and click on Log On. This should direct you to your Emory University login page where you need to enter your net ID and password. Click Login. And now we're logged in. And you can tell that because my name is, in your case, your name should appear here on the top right side of the web page. Now I want to interact with a Jupyter Notebook. And so I'm going to click on Sci4 Jupyter and use Sci4 or Jupyter Hub. Okay, great. Now we are logged into Jupyter, and I'm going to ID these instructions. Let me zoom in so you can see a bit better. So Jupyter Hub, as you can see, is a web application that allows us to manage Jupyter notebooks. And there are different tabs here. The first tab shows you the folder structure. So this is your root folder or your home folder. And these are folders that contain files or Jupyter notebooks, contain any type of file, text files, and so on. Your folder might already contain some of these folders, and that's normal. We can also take a look at Jupyter notebooks that are running, and currently there are no Jupyter notebooks running. So let's go ahead and create a new Jupyter notebook. If you go down on the right menu where it says New and click, select Python 3, and this will create a Jupyter notebook using Python 3. And as you can see, this opens a new tab in your browser. So this is our first Jupyter notebook that we'll use in this course. Let me go ahead and change the name. Currently it's called Untitled, and I want to call it Hello. So I'm going to click Rename, and then that will rename the notebook to Hello. As you can see, Jupyter Hub is saving the notebook as we go ahead, and it tells us that the last checkpoint, the last time this Jupyter notebook was saved was just a couple seconds ago. Now, what are Jupyter notebooks? A notebook is basically a combination of code and text. And a notebook is composed of cells. So here you can see this is a single cell and it's empty. Let's go ahead and take a look at what type of cells we can have. So here with this menu, I can select the type, and by default, this is a code cell. But if I switch to Markdown, I can enter text. So I'm going to just show you a little bit of how to use these Jupyter notebooks, and we're going to go more in detail in class. So a Markdown cell allows you to enter text. So I can just enter text. And I can format it using some symbols. For example, if I put the £, this will create a title. And if I put 2 £, it will create a header that is smaller than this one. Now, right now we're in editing mode, which means we're editing the content of the cell. But I can render the cell by pressing the Shift plus Enter or Return keys, one after the other. So when I do that, Shift plus Enter, this text is now rendered. And as you can see, it shows up as it would do in a document. Now let's look at a code cell. To enter code, I need to select a cell type code. And what I'm allowed to write here is Python code. So for example, I could just write a simple, I can invoke a simple command to print on the screen something. And I can write hello Jupyter. And if I press again Shift plus Return, this command will execute and I can see the output of the Python command right here. Well, let me go ahead and just save this and checkpoint this file. I'm doing this because I want to show you that if I go back now to the first tab, our notebook is right here. It's called hello.ipynb for notebook. And if I click on the running tab, you can see there under the notebooks, there's our notebook and it's running. Now this is where I would shut down the kernel that is running this notebook if somehow this got stuck or some problem came up. Let me go back now to the notebook. Yes, so now I can continue and I can build up a document that contains both text and Python code in it. And I can do this in an interactive way. Let's say, for example, that I want to define a function that adds two numbers. So I'm going to have to know a little bit of Python. I just want to do this to show you how it works. Not really to teach you Python. But here I can define this function. It takes as argument two variables, x and y, and returns the sum of the two. So if I go ahead and press Shift Enter, now this function is defined. And I can call it, let's say, add 2, 3 will return 5. Now, Jupyter has a very convenient feature that the output of a function gets automatically printed out. The output of the last function called in a block of code. So for example, if I call this function 2 times, but with different numbers, here Jupyter is performing 2 operations, the first add and the second add, but it's showing me the result of the second addition. Okay, so now in your first assignment, I want you to go to this address that I'm going to also post in your assignment page. And it's a tutorial on Python scripting. And this is the introductory material. And it goes through the basics of Jupyter Notebooks and will teach you how to interact with Jupyter Notebooks. Now, why are we using this system? It's because it's very convenient. And a lot of modern computational chemistry workflows are now becoming all based on web applications and Python. So through this tutorial, you'll have to go through, read the text, and I want you to take the Python code that is written here and bring it into a Jupyter Notebook and reproduce all these outputs. So in certain cases, some of these pieces of Python are just pieces of code that don't do anything, like this one here. But you'll find those cells of Python code that return an output. Those are the ones that I want you to copy in your own notebook. So very simple. the first thing I can learn here is that I can use the Jupyter Notebook as an interactive Python console. So in Python, I could add two numbers by just typing 3 plus 7, and that should give me out 10. So if I go to my Jupyter Notebook, I can go ahead and enter the Python code 3 plus 7, and I press Shift Return, and I get the result, 10. So I want you to go through this assignment and basically input all this text in Python, and see what happens. This is a very good way to learn how to use Jupyter Notebooks. So for example, in this case, I'm assigning certain numerical values to certain variables in Python, like delta H, delta S, temperature, delta G. And in the case of delta G, I'm using these variables that I've defined up here, using the actual formula that you learned in thermodynamics to compute the variation in free energy. So as you can see, as I execute this code, nothing happens, because in the last command, I performed an assignment. And in this case, Jupyter does not display the value of this variable. But if I paste the variable delta G here and press Shift Return, I can see the actual value. Okay, now that we're done our work with this Jupyter Notebook, I can go ahead and save it. And I can close and halt this notebook. And now we're going back to the main page, and this is now going to show no notebook running while our file is here, and it's saved. And if I want to reopen, I just click on it and I can reaccess it. And as you can see, all the outputs are saved. Okay, let me close. And once I'm done, I can log out of my account. So that's all you need to know to get started. And if you have any questions, let me know on Slack.